So, welcome this week. This week we are looking at leadership. We are still on the series of leadership. And today we will be looking at those conversations that leaders most likely avoid. Maybe before we start, we can hear maybe one of the things that you have noticed where you have been before, where leader, you knew for sure the leader is avoiding this one. Have you encountered something like that?
Yes. Avoiding accountability when things go wrong.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's one example.
They
I
don't
think
want
I
to
think
talk.
for me,
Yes, go ahead,
sorry,
Flori.
I'm saying I think for me, I've realized or I've experienced leaders who prefer their way. It's always their
Mm-hmm.
way or the
Mm-hmm.
highway.
Okay.
They don't like to be told.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
Yeah, that usually happens. And you remember last week when we handled the accountability gaps, one of the challenges we said is when there is no consequences, something has happened and there is nothing that is taken, no action is taken, that tends to discourage, especially the high performers. So if you're a leader and you're not taking that accountability, people have done something wrong and you're not correcting them or you're not reprimanding them, it actually damages the team. And especially those that are high performing, they do not like that kind of lack of accountability. So it is important. So yes, many times leaders often avoid those kind of tough conversations. They know they should be having them, but they usually avoid them. And sometimes it's because of lack of confidence, so you find that they are not quite confident in what they need to do and how to do it. And that is the reason why we usually have this kind of discussion, so that leaders can also understand what they need to do when they need to have those difficult conversations. So we will look at a few things, a few conversations that mainly leaders avoid. We have already had accountability. Sometimes they don't want to talk about accountability. They don't want to take accountability. But one of the key ones is performance. When you have a team and some members of the team are not performing to par, we find there are some leaders who actually find it very difficult to tell the team members that they are not performing at par, which is sad because that is why you're there as a team leader. So you need to have a team, you need to have confidence in dealing with your team, whether it is handling those tough conversations, telling someone that they are not performing. And one of the reasons why that happens is where there is lack of clarity. You don't have very clear goals or objectives, then as a leader, it becomes hard for you. But where the goals are very clear, everybody knows their role, they know this is what is supposed to happen, they know this is what is expected of them, this is what will happen if the targets are not achieved, or this is what will happen when you achieve your targets. That becomes very objective. And in that way, even you as a leader, you will not find it difficult to engage in those kind of discussions. It becomes very easy. Okay? It becomes very easy for you. I am trying to trace something. There's a worksheet that I am looking for. Yeah, so one of those is the difficult conversations. That has always been a challenge for many leaders, but that happens where there is no clear goals or objectives, meaning that as a leader, even you don't know where to start or how to have those kind of conversations. So having clarity will help you. So performance and accountability is one. So leaders find it challenging to address issues of underperformance. They don't want to confront team members who consistently miss targets. But what does that mean for the rest of the team members? What that means is that those who are performing well, when they see that nothing is happening to those who are not performing, they also tend to relax. So you as a leader will find that your team's productivity will go down, not because the people in the team are bad, but because they have seen there are people who are not putting in their effort. If there are people who are consistently missing their targets and nothing is happening to them, then those who are getting to their targets will find it very difficult. And before you know it, you will find people not doing what they need to be to be done. Of course, holding peers to account. You don't want to call out colleagues or partners when their commitment slips. So you know you should be calling them out, but because maybe some of them could be your friends, you feel you don't want to call them out when that needs to happen, that tends also to damage the team. Of course, you find it difficult when you find it difficult to discuss broken promises. You should be handling those issues of missed deadlines. People were supposed to follow up. And we talked about this last week when we talked about the accountability gaps and how you need to identify those accountability gaps. So it is important for you as a leader not to avoid those kind of conversations. If someone needs to be called out because they haven't done what needs to be done, as a leader, you will only do yourself good and your team when you call out those kind of leaders. Great. Any questions? Any questions?
I have a question, Alice.
Yes, go ahead.
So now, how can a leader give honest feedback without discouraging or demotivating an employee?
Wow, just hold that thought there. We will come back to that. That's a very good
Okay.
question.
Okay.
It's a very good question because we will be looking at what can you do as a leader to help you be able to handle or to have those tough conversations that you need to have. Of course, one of the other things that you find leaders are not able to do is having to give feedback, and I think that is where you are. You are supposed to give your team feedback, but sometimes you find leaders shying away from giving the feedback. They are not sure how to give the feedback, what to say. But remember, I said a few minutes ago that when you have very clear objectives, it becomes very easy even for you to give feedback. What I usually advise leaders to do is always focus on the issue. There is a difference when you focus on the issue and when you focus on the person. There's a way you can give feedback and the person you're giving feedback feels attacked. For example, if you're going to give feedback and you tell your person, probably they haven't been following up well, or they have been reporting late, or they have been missing their targets. If you start by telling them you are always, or you always get late, you missed your target the other time, that sounds very accusatory. So anytime you start that conversation with you've already started on an accusatory tone. So you don't focus on the person, because that way then you're focusing on the person, as opposed to saying, I have noticed that this is the targets have not been met. I would want to understand what could be happening. That becomes very objective because we are focusing on the targets and not the person. So as a leader, you need to be able to separate those two things, the person and the issue. And that usually is where the problem is, because a lot of people are not able to do that kind of a separation. And so when you're giving the feedback, you start, talking about you as the person. When you start with you are addressing the person, not the issue. So it is just the way you word your feedback that is what will determine whether the person will get it or not. So that is another area where leaders find it difficult when you're dealing with feedback or development. And when we talk about development is career progression, you find that sometimes leaders are afraid to speak, especially where there is no clear path of promotion in a team. You're not sure, what do I tell this person? But if there is a clear path and everybody understands, then it becomes a lot easier. There is also the challenge of coaching. And for us, what we usually encourage leaders to do is to be able to coach their team. So you find that many leaders, because they may not really be well versed with coaching skills, they may not be coaching their teams well. So that's another thing that a lot of leaders tend to avoid. So instead of coaching, they keep telling. But when you keep telling people, or when you keep advising them, you're not helping them to grow. So we encourage leaders to learn how to coach their teams, because that way, then it becomes very easy for you as a leader to help the team into higher performance. I don't know whether I have answered your question, Lauren.
Yes, you have. Yes, you have, Alice. Thank you for that.
Great, great. Yeah, because those are some of the issues that you keep finding, and it is important. It is important for us to understand where they are. Great, let's move on. So we have said the other one is feedback. We talked about performance, not being able to address issues of underperformance, also not being able to give feedback and address issues of growth. When people tell you, I have been in this organization and I haven't been promoted, or I see you promote so-and-so and you're not promoting me, many leaders shy away from that. But many times when you find that happening in an organization, chances are they do not have a very clear career path for the people. So the solution there is to ensure that you have a very clear career path, so that everybody understands what they need to do for them to grow. Great. So let's move on. The other thing that leaders usually shy away from is addressing issues also to do with culture. Sometimes you find that there are people in the organization who have been there. They keep saying, oh, this is the way we have always done things. And even when you want something to be done differently, you find a lot of resistance to change. People will be resistant to change because they'll be telling you, oh, this is the way that we have always done things. And because that's how they have always done things, then it's difficult for you to engage with them on that front. So be on the lookout, because that's another area where people, a lot of times you will get conflicts where there is need for you to change something.
But
Okay.
Alice, let me ask on that,
Yes.
how can now a leader create a culture where the employees feel safe to speak openly?
Actually, most of the culture we see has to come from the top. If you don't set the culture that you desire to see in your team or in the organization, then the culture will grow somehow. And you don't want culture to come up from the bottom, because it may not be what you want. So a leader plays a very key role in setting the tone in the organization or the culture of the organization. So it is you who will determine the kind of culture that you want. Yeah, but sometimes as a leader, because of maybe lack of knowledge or experience, or you lack confidence, you just let it be. You just let it be. We usually say as a leader, you must lead from the front. And we all know that people usually do what they see other people do. So do the things that you would want to see. And then the rest of the team are likely to follow what you're doing. And that's how you build a culture that you desire. If you don't, then the culture will just emerge by itself. And that may be a very dangerous thing. You may find that sometimes there are people who have, I'm sure you have heard people talking about a toxic environment. Yes. So when there is a toxic environment, it's probably because the leader failed to confront individuals who undermine the team culture or you know someone is actually not doing the right thing, or they have gossip or something like that that makes an environment toxic. When you don't handle that as a leader, then it means that you are encouraging a wrong culture. And that is a discussion that as a leader you must be able to have. The other one is things to do with ethical concerns. You may find that, yes, you know that there's issues that are conflicting with the values that you have or the customer trust. So as a leader, that is a conversation that you should engage in. It is not something that should allow your team members to engage in or to continue if it is happening. You should be able to bring it out. But as a leader, if you find that you have a challenge confronting such issues, then you can be sure it's going to be difficult for you. Things to do with bias. Some people may feel, oh no, the leader is biased towards a certain group of people or a certain individual. And if they don't see you, or there is someone else in the team who is actually showing favoritism or bias, as a leader, if you don't confront that, then it's going to be difficult for even the rest of the members of the team. Okay? Others is things to do with the strategy. It could be the way as a leader, as a team, you may not have all the resources, but how do you ensure that everybody feels like they have been considered? If you have limited resources, does everybody in the organization feel they have been considered? Or some people will feel like you favor certain departments when it comes to resource allocation as opposed to others. So those are difficult conversations that many times leaders tend to avoid, but it is important for you as a leader to understand that they have to happen. You need to ensure that those conversations happen, because if they do not happen, you're likely to destroy your team unknowingly, especially the people who are high performing. They are very keen to check on how you are doing it. And if they are not happy, you can be sure you're likely to lose them very, very quickly. Yeah, so how do you divide, or how do you allocate the resources in the organization? So that's a discussion that you must always be ready to have. If there is change that is expected, that's a strategic thing or structural thing. There could be changes that will affect members of the organization. How do you handle that? Are you confident enough to handle that? You know that you could encounter resistance. How do you ensure that you communicate to the team so that you get their buy-in? The other area that is strategic that sometimes leaders find it hard to engage in is where there is some vision misalignment. Yeah. And this is where, as a leader, you don't want to engage in discussions, even when you can see that there are leadership goals that are clashing with team priorities. You, as a leader, you need to speak up and say what you think needs to be done or what you think needs to happen. But as a leader, if you don't do that and your team members can clearly see that there is already a challenge, then you're likely to lose the team. And the team is likely to lose confidence in you. And many times they actually see. You don't want to say no to the management or to the top leadership, yet you can clearly see what they are saying you do is going to be in conflict with what, as a team, you're supposed to do. That is what we call vision misalignment. And it is you as a leader who needs to come up quickly and let the leadership know that that is going to affect the team. It's not okay. So if you keep quiet and just let it pass, the people in your team will actually see, and they will know that you cannot defend them. And when they know that you cannot defend them, then you will lose respect from them. And that is likely to be now a very dysfunctional team. Great. Any questions so far? Okay. So the big question that we need to ask is, why leaders must lean in? Why must you engage in those difficult conversations? One of the things you need to remember is that avoidance, when you avoid having those difficult conversations, that avoidance creates silent resentment. The team will start resenting you. There is going to be unclear expectations. And of course, that will lead to declining performance. And this is possible because of the things we have said. The team is not going to trust you anymore. If they see there is somebody who is having toxic behavior and it's not being called out, then they are going to lose confidence in you as a leader. And that is going to affect the entire team performance. But when leaders step into these conversations, they have to do it with empathy. They have to do it with clarity, because the goal is to build trust and to strengthen an accountability within the team. So when you ensure that you don't ignore any difficult conversation, you actually gain respect from your team, confidently see what you are doing. So you have to engage in those courageous conversations. And one of the things that you can do, these are just a few practical tips that can help you as a leader be able to engage in those discussions with courage. First and foremost, I have already said, you have to state the issue clearly. Being able to separate issues from the person or from emotions, because many times we get blurred there. But as a leader, you must always remain focused on the issue. What is the issue? What is the main issue? Then, of course, you need to be able to explain the impact on the team. If it's behavior, for example, what we said, if there is someone who has some toxic behavior, as a leader, you need to be able to explain what does that mean for the entire team? What impact will it have on the entire team? What impact will it have on the customers? What impact will that have on the goals that you have? Then it is important for you, when you have already stated that, you have stated the facts, you have given the impact, then ask, invite perspective. Let the person that you're dealing with also speak. Let them say what they think. The other time, I think was last week or the other week, when we were talking, and I said you must always ask people for an opinion, because everybody has an opinion. That will give you a perspective. Where do they stand as far as this issue is concerned? So for you is to be able to listen very carefully, so that you can get to hear what the people are saying. And remember, we said when you are listening, you must also listen to what they are not saying. Because sometimes as a team, they may not tell you everything, but as a leader, you should be able to listen carefully, so that you're able to hear what they may not be telling you. Then once you have already listened to them and they have given you their perspective, it's important to agree on the next steps. When you agree on what needs to be done, you are actually asking them to take ownership. They are taking ownership. You are saying, yes, this is what we need to do. And better still, you can come up with timelines. We need to have done this by this time. That way, nobody will say that you put it on them or you forced them. Once you have agreed on the next step and the timelines, that is usually good. And then, of course, come up with a follow-up. We have talked a lot about follow-up, whether it is when we were talking about sales, whether it is now as leadership, and we saw that that is also a bit of where we get an accountability gap. So follow-up must be very clear. When are we meeting to discuss this? When are we looking at this next? Make sure that that is good, because that is how you will close that loop. If you don't close that loop, then you will find yourself now going back to square one, and it is not important. It is not going to be helpful for the team. So remember what we have said. Those are 5 steps that we have talked about. You have to state the issue very clearly. That will help you separate the issue from emotions or the person, so that you're focusing on the issue that has been agreed upon. Then you must explain the impact that issue has, whether on the team, whether on the customers, or the overall goals of the organization. then you have to invite them to give you their perspective or their opinion. And then after that, you agree on the next steps, which brings in the issue of ownership. And of course, the follow-up, which is important for you to have the follow-up. Okay? Any questions? Any questions?
No questions.
Great, that's good. Now, some of the questions that you can ask yourself, especially if you have had that discussion with the team or the member of the team that you were thinking about, as a leader, there are some questions that you can ask yourself. Remember, we are trying to help someone become courageous in asking questions so that you don't avoid having those difficult conversations. One of the questions you can ask yourself, how did the conversation go compared to my expectation? You as an individual, how did it go? Did you are just gauging yourself. What did I learn about myself as a leader? As you're having that conversation, you're also listening to yourself so that you're asking, what did I learn? Probably you knew you were finding it difficult in the past, but now you have been able to. So as a leader, you probably learned how to separate issues, because that is an area that I have found a lot of leaders struggle with. So maybe as a leader now you have been able to separate the issues. So be sure that you know, what am I learning? Because remember, this is a journey. What will I do differently next time? Now that you have learned what you have learned, what else will you do differently? So as a leader, it's good to ask yourself those questions. They will help you as well. Now, I will give a few tips on how you as a leader can become better at asking those questions. So starting those difficult conversations is a skill that every leader needs to have. And you have to be very intentional. You have to be very deliberate as a leader. But there are some things that are important. You must prepare. When you think about it, it's not one of those things that you will just get into without any preparation. As a leader, you need to always be prepared. You have to think, how do I engage in this conversation with empathy? Because empathy is what is going to make the difference. And of course, clarity, because if there is no clarity as a leader, that is likely to be very difficult for you. So I will give you a few tips that you can use, and this is going to be helpful. First and foremost, as a leader, you must prepare your mindset. You must prepare, you must tell yourself, I have to get into these conversations. I am not going to avoid this conversation anymore. So you have to ground yourself. Even before you get to initiate that conversation, you have to get yourself grounded. You must prepare yourself. You must set your mind to doing it. So you must first and foremost identify your own triggers, emotional triggers. Because remember, this is a difficult conversation that you're going to have with a member of your team. So there could be some emotions that you have felt. Sometimes you feel anger, you're feeling frustrated. Those are emotions. So you must identify what are those triggers. Maybe there is something this person says or the way they say it that makes you just angry. So you must be able to identify your own emotions and triggers. This is actually emotional intelligence. When we talk about emotional intelligence, we say you must understand your own emotions first. So you must build your level of emotional intelligence. Number two, you must always remind yourself of the bigger purpose. Why are you here? Why are you doing this? Is it for the team? If it is for the good of the team, then you must remind yourself, I am not doing it for myself. I am doing it for the team. And I want everybody to build trust. I want people to have clarity. So it must be very clear to you, the bigger picture. What is it that you want to accomplish? And then you definitely must practice to be calm, because remember, if you're having a difficult conversation with someone, you're likely to get carried away, you're likely to get angry, you're likely to feel frustrated. So as a leader, you must practice to remain calm. Be calm. Practice to be calm. So that's number one. with all those 2 points that I have mentioned. The second thing is that you have to clarify the core message. Remember, we said you must identify what the issue is. So we are addressing the issue, we are not addressing the person. So that means that you have to know exactly what you need to say so that the conversation stays focused. And that is why I said it is important for you to prepare before you sit down with the person that you're sitting down with. You write down the issue, let it be very clear, separate facts from any assumptions. Sometimes there could be assumptions. So you need to be able to separate that issue and identify it completely. And as a leader, you need also to decide what would be your desired outcome. When Parik took us through, for those who have listened, the negotiation skills, one of the things we were told is that you must have an idea of what you want. What is the expected outcome that you're looking for? So it is the same thing here. You must sit as a leader and ask yourself, what do I want to see at the end of this discussion? Number 3, you must choose the right setting. Environment is actually very important when you are going to discuss. If you're going to discuss with your teammate, probably they think if they come to your office, there is that overwhelming presence of you, the authority, so they may feel intimidated. So you may want to move to a neutral place. If you're in the office, you probably have a boardroom or you have another office that is not as intimidating. It is important for you to look for a neutral location. A neutral location will help you. Always avoid being rushed or high stress moments. High stress moments could be like when people are just about to go home. People have already worked the whole day. You don't want to be called out by your boss now, oh, come back. That is a high stress moment. So you need to find out what would be a right time for me to engage this person. Number 4, and this is the fourth tip, you must use empathetic language. Remember, we said one of the things you must do is to approach this with a lot of empathy. So you have to frame the issue with care because this reduces defensiveness. Remember when we were talking and I said, every time you start a sentence with you did, you're actually setting the other person on the defense. And you will not actually get anywhere. So instead of doing that, you can actually say, I value your contribution, and I would like to talk about something that can help us work better. That way, you have neutralized it. You have actually used a lot of I statements as opposed to you. Okay? So make sure that you are not starting your sentences to be blaming. People see you're blaming them, you're accusing them, so they will jump into the defense. And when they jump into the defense, it will be very difficult for you to win them again. Always acknowledge the other person's perspective. Remember, I have already said that you can ask them, and you have to always try to be balanced. So that will help. Every time, and this is the final one, you need to always seek how do you have to close with a next step. Never leave a discussion like that without a next step. We said the next step is what will create the ownership so that the person feels they have been involved, and that will help them be able to complete it quickly. All right? Yeah, so those are the 5 steps that I wanted to share with us, how you can help yourself to become courageous, to be able to have those difficult conversations as a leader. Because whether you like it or not, as a leader, if you're going to be a very effective leader, it is important for you to understand. But it is also good to ask for collaboration. Yeah, let them see how you can work together, how you can solve that issue together, so that you help the team, the whole team or the organization or the customer, whatever your big picture was. That is important. So those are I think they are 6 or 5. I gave 6 or 5. I think they were 5. So let me just quickly summarize some of the tips that you can use. Number 1, we said that you need to prepare your mindset, means you have to prepare for that. Number 2, we say that you have to clarify what the core issue is. Number 3, you have to choose the right setting. You don't have to, you need to find the right environment to have that discussion. You have to use empathetic language. We have talked about you using I statements more than you use you. Then, of course, invite them to collaborate, and of course, close with the next step. So once you learn those, they will help you be able to have those discussions, however difficult they are, because they are important for you to have them. Now, there is something I usually give, but this one I will give to those who ask for. I can give you some worksheets that you can use. You can do it for yourself, workshops that will help you reflect and prepare for those difficult conversations. And if you're interested, just let me know. You can reply to the mail that we give you and tell us to give you. We can give you one for you and one for the team. We usually use them when we do training. So we can do that, but you will need to ask for it. This one we will not send to everybody. We will give to those who are interested. I want to stop there.